Hello, 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 and welcome to PitchZone. It is my great pleasure to host PitchZone every Thursday for our audience of entrepreneurs and executives who want to present better and become more effective in their jobs. And each week, we are inviting a guest, and today I'm absolutely thrilled to have a guest that I consider him larger than life. A tremendous background in the military, and now he's been serving corporate America and the startup community. But before we bring him in, let me very quickly bring in Nathan Gold, my co host. Nathan, how are you today?
Doing well, thank you. Good morning from California.
We just had a tremendously interesting discussion already with our guest back here. Are you excited?
I am very much so, very much so. I
All
believe
right.
the audience is going to learn a bunch of things of today that either they've never heard before or they have, but now they're going to hear it in a new and more amplified way.
Indeed. And we have a couple of viewers on YouTube. We have Tatiana here. Tatiana, it's great to see you. And we have Rick from Boston, Massachusetts. Rick, I hope all is well on your side of the globe. And of course, like almost every week, Massimo Peroncelli is joining us from rainy or not so rainy Thailand today, still in the rainy season. So we have a great group online. If you haven't said hello yet, please do so in the comments. And with that, let's bring in the man of the hour, literally, Joe Polanin. Joe, it is such a pleasure to welcome you to Pitch Zone. How are you today?
Claudio, thank you so much. I'm doing very well from Tampa, Florida. So happy to be with you and Nathan today. Thank you so much for the opportunity and greatly appreciate it.
It is our honor and privilege to have you here. And usually, our show here is very presentation heavy. But today's topic is actually not about presentations, it's about leadership. Because every executive, every entrepreneur does not only need to be a savvy presenter, but of course, a really solid leader. And when it comes to leadership, Joe, I've met you earlier this year and I was impressed from the get-go. So before we even dive in, let me just go to a very high level. What is effective leadership to you?
Yes, Claudio, effective leadership is all about caring. It's not a position, it's not a title, it's not a rank, it's not an office. If you care about people genuinely from your heart, if you are committed to a process of learning and improving yourself, enabling and empowering and elevating others, then you can be a leader. And this 360-degree perspective is extraordinarily important. Great leaders don't think about what they're going to do, they do it. They take action. That action generates confidence and it helps elevate others. So to me, it begins and ends with authenticity and caring. And let me also add that great leaders have to be followers first. There are some who believe that leadership might be a rank or a position. There may be leadership functions or management functions that are accrued by that rank, but true leadership is about learning to be a follower first, then learning to lead one's self, and ensuring that you demonstrate how you care about others and that you demonstrate your commitment to learning. You don't just talk about it because you can't talk about these things, you have to do them. And then one earns the privilege to become a leader of teams or a leader of others. To me, that's great leadership.
And Joe, what would you say are the key qualities that you consider essential for an effective leadership role in any field?
Yeah, Nathan, there are so many, and I would be with you for the next 3 to 4 hours to talk about them, and I would not achieve a complete list. Nor do I think that a complete documentation of something like that is even possible. However, there are a few to me that stand out. That some of which I've already mentioned. Number one is caring, and this goes hand in hand with empathy. Great leaders listen to understand someone else's perspective and understand someone else's point of view, not necessarily to respond. There may be a response required, there may not be. Sometimes people just want you to listen and care about them. And when a team knows that their leader cares about them, they will move mountains. So to me, number one is caring. Number two is courage. Doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not necessarily because there's a policy or a directive or a rule somewhere. Um, Great leaders have an internal ethical compass that drives them. They are principled realists. They live by a set of principles, core values, some call them. Others call them character, morals. There's something internal to the leader that says, this is what's right, and I'm going to do the right thing. And that set of principles guides those great leaders. And then they live in the real world. They don't try to see things the way they want them to be. They see things the way they are, and they elevate and help their teams achieve greater things. They're going to have a bold vision for the future. They're going to want to create something that's almost unimaginable to some. And people say, well, how can we achieve that? We're going to achieve it together because the leader is going to provide that environment and provide that inspiration. So for me, caring, courage, and then character, that set of principles, that ethical compass that guides the leader, those for me are the top three.
Wow, that's very, very well put. Now, your background is in the military, right? You mentioned 17 deployments out there. Your career spanned over decades. And in the military, you cannot always choose your team, right? You have to work with what you have. Now it's different. In the corporate world, you can choose your teams. What are you looking for when you assemble a team or you are consulting a company in building their team, making it more effective? What are you looking for each of the team members? What are the most important characteristics that they need to bring to be an effective team member?
Yes, so many of the characteristics are similar or complementary or have alignment with the characteristics of a great leader. But first and foremost, there has to be an alignment of core values and alignment of mission. I was having this discussion with a colleague the other day, and they said, well, I was having a challenge with respect to recruiting and hiring and retaining the best and fully qualified talent. I want to bring in the best and brightest. And my suggestion was, when you do your interviews, how do you discuss and how do you analyze their core values alignment? This is what our company, this is what our team stands for. This is who we are. This is why we do what we do. Having that discussion with potential team members to say, what do you stand for? What are your core values? What's your ethical compass? Why do you love this company? And why do you want to become part of this team? Those are questions that I think are very important, that must be asked in these types of interactions, and not to get too detailed, but in these types of interviews, because every organization and every team should be doing that. They should be seeking to attract, hire, and retain the best and brightest, what we like to call the best and fully qualified. So I always think of education, qualification, and proficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Education, you have received some sort of knowledge. Wonderful. Qualification, you have met some sort of minimum standard. You might have a certificate, you might have a degree, you might have some other type of professional documentation that says you've met a minimum standard, but how proficient are you in that particular area? In these types of processes and selecting team members, not only are we looking for people who are the best and brightest, educated, qualified, and exceptionally proficient, we want to make sure that we're bringing in individuals who have that core value alignment with the
Mm-hmm.
organization and with the team. I read not that long ago, and my statistics may be off, that for employees in the United States who are 30 years old and younger, the average amount of time that they stay with a team is about 16 months. My thesis is the reason why they're leaving is because they are either A, uninspired by their leaders, or B, there's a lack of core value alignment. So for me, that's very important.
Mm. Okay, okay. And you prompted now a couple questions here from our audience. Let me bring up two questions here. The first one from Massimo. Massimo says, after a roof on your head and food in your mouth, my life experiences taught me that ego comes next. How do you keep it out of the single players' minds for a successful team bonding? So how can we get the ego-driven characteristics out? And then Tatiana, her question is a little bit along the same line, right? About many people being negatively impacted by leaders that are the opposite, self-centered, punitive, and toxic. So again, I think that's then the ego on the leader's side that comes in the way. So in a nutshell, how do you deal with ego? Either on the team member side or on the leader side, him or herself.
So, to both of our audience members, thank you very much for those provoking questions. And for me, it's all about the ethos of quiet professionalism. Now, that's not literally being quiet. Right? I love to talk. I'm not saying you have to be quiet. Quiet professionalism is an ethos. It's aligned with humility. It's waking up every day, whether you are the leader or the team member, and committing to this principle. I'm not the smartest person on my team. There's always someone who knows more than me, who's smarter than me, better, stronger, faster at some discipline. And I want to have the attitude, we as leaders want to have the attitude that we're constantly bringing in and surrounding ourselves with people who are smarter than we are, better than we are, surrounding ourselves, as General McChrystal would say, with a team of teams. And the best way that I have seen, not only to mitigate what our audience members are talking about, is this focus on quiet professionalism, being humble, being contrite. There's a phrase that it's amazing what you can accomplish when you don't care who gets the credit.
Yes.
So great leaders will say, I'm not interested in the credit. In fact, I'm going to downplay any contributions I have to this team's success. And I'm going to get up every day and I'm going to say, I'm not the smartest person on my team. There's always someone who knows more. And I'm not going to rest until they get recognition for the great job that they did. And I'll leave you with this thought. If the team wins, then the individuals on the team will be recognized and the leader will ensure that. If the team by chance stumbles or makes a mistake, the leader is the only one who fails. And the leader is quick to take the blame and accept full responsibility and accountability. And that for me is the ethos of quiet professionalism, doing what's right because it's right, not worrying about who gets the credit. And when a leader not only can display that and demonstrate that every day, but for the team members can recruit and attract and retain team members who share that same set of values and that same belief, you've got something rare and something fantastic that's going to happen in your team, in your organization, and across your enterprise.
Wow, Joe, you just taught me two words together that I knew individually, but it really helped me in the moment understand why being quiet and silent in many meetings has generally a very positive effect on what people think about you before you speak. So your words of quiet professionalism are now added to my vocabulary. Thank you so much for that. Now, I want to go back to the best and fully qualified. After so many years, you get a spidey sense when you're interviewing these cats you're going to hire in or bring in, especially when you can choose them versus, oh, here's 25 people you have to work with. What is your guide for how do you know you can really trust what you're hearing from people? Because people can say anything they want to say, obviously, but what do you look for when you're doing that qualification and interview process? I'm just curious.
Yeah, Nathan, thank you for your compliment and your recognition, and I appreciate what you said about quiet professionalism. And what I look for in those types of conversations is I attempt to prepare diligently before the conversation, and I force myself to make sure that I ask questions that start with how and what and why. Because if I ask too many questions as an interviewer or as someone who has the opportunity to make that selection, as you said, first of all, if I ask too many questions, it will dilute the effectiveness and the efficiency of the discussion, in my opinion. Second, when we ask questions that begin with what and why and how, in my experience, we will receive 6 or 7 bits of information by asking one question. Why do you love this company and why do you want to work for us? How are your core values aligned with our company's values? And tell me more about your ethical compass. What does that look like for you? We talked about those themes earlier, but what I find is asking questions that require a very thoughtful, almost an analytical response on the part of the individual who's going to answer that question gives me greater depth and greater insight into, as you said, they could say anything they want, but it gives me greater depth into how do they respond. And there are frequent times where in the first 20 minutes using these techniques, I can frequently tell if this is someone that I want to work with, if this is someone that I want to know more about, if this is someone that I want to build a relationship based upon mutual respect and build trust with. And other times it doesn't take that long.
Well,
So
thank you
that's
for
what works
helping
for
our
me.
thank you for helping our audience with new meaning for open-ended questions and why we ask open-ended questions. Excellent. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
And you are prompting a couple of really, really interesting questions here, Joe. So let's go back to our comments here. Philip, and by the way, hello, Philip. Thanks for joining today. Philip puts up some statistics about Generation Z. Research shows that 70% are more interested in hard skills instead of soft skills. Yet we know soft skills are most needed. 60% of Generation Z say they leave the company if they do not meet their values. How do you think this conflict will and can be resolved?
Yeah. So thank you very much for that question and for both of those questions and the observation. I think they are complementary, right? The core value alignment that you mentioned is exactly what we were talking about earlier. So an individual that wants to work for a company that meets their core values should not apply to a company that does not meet their core values, and should not say, I'm very focused on hard skills, and here's this really nice job description, and here's what I believe I want to do, and let me apply for that role. The individual, Gen Z or not, my recommendation is the individual should do some research on the team, on the organization, on the enterprise that they want to join. Perhaps talk with individuals who are already employed by that organization and find out what their experiences are. That this is a common practice, and I think it's one that's quite effective. And I know there are actually schools that teach this, and so it's very productive in my view. Making sure that, as we said earlier, the corollary of it's not just the company's core values that align with the candidate, it's the candidate's core values and their desire to work somewhere where they are going to be valued, they are going to be appreciated, they are going to be elevated. When a team member has that feeling, they will want to learn more, they will want to do more, they will want to help others on the team achieve more. With respect to the focus on hard skills and soft skills, my personal experiences when I was in my 20s and to an extent in my 30s, I too focused on hard skills because that was what was important at that time. There's a period of time where we, as leaders, whether it's a new leader, an experienced leader, or a very senior, seasoned leader that's in charge of an enterprise and responsible for hundreds of thousands of people, and a range in between. There's a period of time where we focus on doing things well. Then there's a period of time where we elevate and we transcend and we focus on developing leaders to lead teams to do things well. And then there's another transition and another elevation to leading teams that accomplish great things. My observation is that as we transcend through that process, and as we elevate ourselves, and more importantly, the young leaders that we're developing, we transcend from that notion of hard skills to soft skills. It's not immediate. It's not like flipping a light switch, but I had a mentor that taught me this, and it was sort of like an aha moment. Wake up, Joe, move up to the next level. And he brought me aside and he said, I see you in these different meetings and I see you in these different planning sessions, and you're running around and you've got your notebook out and you're taking notes and you're making things happen and you're doing things. And I said, thank you, sir. And he said, wait a minute. When are you going to jump from being someone who just does things and become someone who develops teams to accomplish big things? And that has stuck with me. And that's why I wanted to share it with you today, for the benefit of, not only those viewers who asked the question, but others who may be watching and listening. It isn't all about hard skills versus soft skills. It's about that transition and that elevation and that process of transcending to become one who develops great teams to accomplish big things.
That's amazing, Joe. And what you've just done for everybody online is just help them, in my mind, understand that it's only how we think about what we're doing. It's a mindset. It's nothing different. That person who gave you that incredible advice just made you think a little bit differently about what you're doing and how you're moving forward. Okay. Wow. Mind blown. Okay. So I have a question that maybe might be a little bit unusual, but I know in your career this has happened many, many times, either to you or you've had to do it to somebody else. But in the startup world, I very often get people who ask me, how do I defend myself against an obnoxious or somebody trying to dress me down, whether it's a man or a woman? And it doesn't matter because we all get dressed down, or investors try to dress us down, make us go into whatever defensive mode they're seeing if we'll go into. And I'm curious if you could shed some light for all of our guests on what do you recommend people do if they are in the receiving end of getting dressed down or attempting to get dressed down?
Yeah, thank you, Nathan. These experiences are, there's no way to sugarcoat it. These experiences are challenging. They are sometimes, they stick with us in a negative way, and we don't want that to happen. I will frame this by saying it's not easy, and it takes time. And my advice, what has worked for me, and in some cases what hasn't worked for me, because a lot of times there's a process or there's an approach that works, and because it worked in a certain situation, we remember that and we hold on to it and we treat it as a best practice. And there are other learnings that we derived for something that we tried and it didn't work, and we hold on to that as a lesson learned. Oh, I'm not going to do that again because it didn't work. So I frame this by saying what I'm about to say isn't easy. Number one, does the individual who's down dressing you have any authority over you? Do they have the authority to tell you yes or no? Or are they offering you an opinion? Do they have the authority to hire or fire you? Or is it a colleague? Is it a disagreement? Is it a discussion? Is it an argument? Because arguments and disagreements among colleagues on a team are very often beneficial. They help that team consider different points of view that they hadn't before, and sometimes they help that team achieve more than it could have been possible but for the argument. And very often great colleagues have differences of opinion, and you know what, they apologize to one another after and everything's fine. But number one, consider the position of the individual who's down dressing you. Do they have any real authority over you? If they do, then we're going to talk about that in a minute. If they don't, then very often the appropriate response is a very minimal response. The appropriate response is listen, thank the person for their point of view, and move on. And that's it. If, however, the person has real authority over you and has the ability to tell you yes or no, or make a decision that affects you or the company or the organization, then what I have seen that's very important to do is listen, take it all on board, and when you choose to respond, respond very precisely to their concern or what their problem is. I have seen it where individuals will become even more upset if it seems like you're trying to pivot or take the conversation in a different direction. Listening to understand their point of view, vice listening to respond, which we talked a little bit about earlier, and just focus on that one thing and explain how you understand their point of view and how you will work to make sure that that doesn't happen again, for example, or whatever the subject of the down dressing was. So I hope that's helpful.
It is. I have a follow-up to that, though, if you don't mind, and that is
Of course.
the pressure that we feel, that startuppers feel when they walk into an investor's office in person or online is so heavy for many of them that when they're getting dressed down, they drop into this very defensive mode and start punching back instead of doing what you've said or having a conversation. So could you talk to us about pressure? What are some of your best tips, techniques to handle literally any kind of pressure, whether it's self-imposed or something out there that you don't know what's going on, or you put it on? How would you help us handle pressure?
Of course. To your point on investors, I would, before I get into pressure, to your point on investors, I would just offer this: not all money is good money. Not all good money is the right money for you and for your startup and for your business. And it's okay if 100 people tell you no, because you just need the one yes. And so that's for the investor part. That's what I would offer. Do not be discouraged. Stay the course. When it comes to pressure, this is not an axiom. This is what I believe works and what I believe is the core and essential element for great leaders, teammates, managers at all levels to handle pressure. Number one, remain calm. There's no one
Yes.
I know of that has ever solved a pressure situation or has ever dissolved a potential crisis or conflict by getting excited, exacerbated, anxious, angry, or demonstrating emotions that don't contribute to solving the problem. Number one, remain calm. Number two, do your best. It's easy to say, do your best. We do our best every day. We do the best we can. We give 100%. These are wonderful phrases. But can we look ourselves in the mirror as leaders, as mentors, as teammates, and say that when we're in a high pressure, high risk, or high threat situation, and there are variables being thrown at us that we don't control that add to that pressure, can we honestly say that we did our best? And then number three, remain confident. Remain confident that you will solve this problem, that you will overcome the pressure situation, whether it is an individual situation, whether it's a team situation, a collective enterprise situation. Those three principles for me have been the ones that last and have been the ones that worked. Remain calm, do your best, and be confident. And I'll end by saying, when a leader of a team does this, the team derives a sense of calmness, a sense of certainty, a sense of assurance, a sense of purpose, that they know there's a lot they don't control and they know there are a lot of problems out there, but gosh darn it, we're going to solve this thing and we're going to get through it and it's going to work out. A team that has that type of certainty, that comes from what the leader is doing and how the leader is conducting themselves, in my experience, is unstoppable, especially in a pressure or a crisis situation.
hmm Now, out of those three, remain calm, do your best, and be confident, right? It's easy to say to somebody, be calm. But how specifically? Like if you have a person like me, right? I'm not the calmest person on the planet, right? So what advice do you have for me in a situation where, I'm the opposite of calm and I
Mhm.
couldn't care less because it's stressful, so I need to rattle myself up, right?
Mhm.
How do you teach me to be calm?
One way, Claudio, thank you for sharing that. One way that I have seen and I have observed and I have practiced myself is just simply breathe in, hold for 4 seconds, and exhale.
hmm
Generally speaking, after that, things look a lot better.
Yeah.
Give yourself 30 seconds. It's not that bad. Number two, remember that whatever the causal factor is that's making you anxious or making you want to get amped up or preventing you from being calm, when you take that breath and when you pause for about 30 seconds and reflect, put it in context. You're not the first person facing this type of challenge. There are many other organizations that have it way worse than you. And you have a lot to be thankful for and a lot to be grateful for. And there are way, way more positive things happening than this one potential thing that's gnawing at you or getting at you. And when you put that in context, I believe that helps to dissolve some of that individual anxiety. Now, does it remove it completely? No. I will share a lesson about diving. Diving is scuba diving, any type of diving. It is at once one of the most, if not the most, high risk tactical operations that we can do. The human body is not meant to be at 100 feet in the water column. It's just not what we're supposed to do. And there are many, many risks, life-threatening risks associated with diving if the diver does not follow very specific rules, regulations, practices, and policies, right? I was speaking with a young individual who wanted to be a diver. And I said to them, why do you want to be a diver? And they said, well, I'm not afraid of anything and I can handle anything. And well, first of all, that wasn't the answer to the question. He did not answer the question. He didn't tell me why he wanted to be a diver. He just felt compelled to tell me that he wasn't afraid of anything. I then reminded him that fear is a good thing. And as you mentioned, having this anxiety, we're never going to be able to remove all of our fears, our concerns, the things that might trigger us to not remain calm. It's how one takes that fear and channels it and overcomes it and leads oneself. We talked earlier about learning to be a follower, learning to lead yourself, and then learning to lead others. How do you lead yourself to overcome any fear and anxiety and remain calm? My feedback to this young individual was, come back to me when you have some fear, because there are many reasons why you don't want to say, I'm afraid of nothing. Channel that, because we're all human. So I hope that that's helpful.
Oh, very, very helpful. Very helpful. And I tell you, I just calmed down tremendously just by listening to you.
Awesome.
Now, I want to ask the same question about the confidence. It's
Mm-hmm.
easy to say, be confident. You just got to be confident. But if somebody doesn't have it yet, I mean, there are reasons why they are uncertain, maybe insecure. How can you help them to develop that confidence that makes them unshakable?
There's a short word that I'll use and then I'll expand upon it, and it's action. So starting out by taking small actions first, learning from mistakes, bringing in best practices, what worked, didn't work. And if you're a team member, you have to have leaders and managers who want you to become more confident. This goes back to that workplace environment that our audience members were asking about earlier. Having leaders and managers who want their team members to become more confident will create these types of environments. Number one, educating and empowering and then delegating small tasks to them and making sure that team members accomplish these small tasks. Small tasks begin to build confidence when they are accomplished well. And when the individual makes a mistake, the leader's reassurance that, hey, it's okay to make mistakes. We're all human. We're all going to mess up. That's fine. You're going to learn from what you do that you did right, and you're going to learn from the mistakes that you make, potentially even more. Over time, the delegation occurs of greater actions, and greater actions consistently performed well, whether there is a mistake or whether there's success, will continue to build confidence. I believe it was Dale Carnegie that said, action breeds confidence and inaction breeds fear. We want to begin, especially with younger leaders, younger teammates who may not have had the chance to take those stepping stones yet and build that hierarchy of confidence. Small actions build confidence, greater actions build greater confidence, and mitigate and reduce fear and allow the individual to have that calmness that we talked about earlier. And I'll just add one point because I think this is important. We as leaders always seek to demonstrate and to elevate others to demonstrate confidence, but never arrogance. There's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. We never want to cross that line, nor do we ever want to encourage anyone to get close to that line. So to me, that's important. That's what works.
Wow. Well, we'll have to have a separate conversation. What do you do if you do have to work for somebody like that? But let's let that one go for today because I'd like to end on a better note. By the way, you reminded me of Dale Carnegie. I forgot about that lesson in that book, which was written in October of 1936, by the way. So it still works today. And you heard it from Joe himself. And we've all believed in the 6 principles of getting people to like you. But that distinction you just reminded me about that's cool. So, Joe, I have one last question. I could spend all day listening to you talk because you just are so full of solid nourishment and no empty calories. And I appreciate that. And I think our audience does as well. So here's my last question. If you could go back into your early 20s and whisper something into your ear, what would you tell yourself that you would be willing to share with this audience here today?
Nathan, thank you again for your kindness and for your compliment. If I was talking to Joe in his 20s, there are a few things I would say. Number one, be kind to others every time you get the opportunity to do that. Number two, your life, your purpose, why you're here has nothing to do with your job or your profession, and it has absolutely nothing to do with yourself. You are here to create positive impact for others. You are here to serve others, and never forget that. I would also tell young Joe to trust his instincts and to trust his intuition. Sometimes we refer to this as gut and heart. They may seem interchangeable. Generally speaking, when you have an instinct about something or you have an intuition about something, listen to it. That does not mean sway in the breeze of whatever opportunity happens to come your way. It means if something feels right, there's a reason why it feels right. Listen to it. If something feels wrong, there's a reason why your DNA and your ethical compass and your core values are telling you that. Listen to it. So be kind. Your life is about serving other people. Never forget that. And trust your gut and trust your heart.
So profound, Joe. I am absolutely happy with how our discussion here went. I know we could go on for another hour or two. Unfortunately, we are reaching the top of the hour here. So I just want to tell everybody in our audience that is watching us today live or watches the replay, you can reach Joe at thealakaigroup.com. His website there has the links to all of his social media channels. And Joe is doing a lot of great things with teams of all sizes. You've listened to him right now, and you probably can imagine that if you get him involved in your organization, things might just go really well after his involvement. Joe, thank you so much for making the time today to have this conversation with us and with our audience here. Thank you, of course, Nathan, like every week.
A pleasure.
Truly enjoyable. And thanks all of our audience members here, whether you watched us live and asked questions. Thank you very much for making it engaging. And to anybody that watches us on replay. And if you do like what you see, well, then click that like button, hit the subscribe, because we are here every single week doing something similar. And with that, I wish you all a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. And we shall see each other again next week. Bye-bye.